Alright, I'm going to do a little video here of my carbon Kevlar process. It's pretty much exactly the same as doing carbon fiber. And I by no means am an expert at this, so if you've got better ways of doing shit, feel free to do it. I've only done it a few times, but this is the easy way I found to do it. This is the door insert piece for the Mustang I'm working on. So when you get this shit, it comes in a cloth. Most of you know that, some of you might not. Looks really blue there, especially when you get it up next to the finished piece, but once this is buffed out and the light hits it, you'll really see it. But I kind of like it that way. It's real subtle. But anyways, this is how the piece started out. This is one of the warped ass ones you can see. That's not good. Can't have that shit. And this warped just from the body filler being on it, but you can see it's got a contour to it. And I had the base of, I think, 1/8 inch masonite. And then I did a little body filler over that, but that shit's going in the garbage can. I made this one last night out of a solid 1/2 inch piece of MDF. Threw it on the router, angled it down. It's about a 1/4 inch thick down there, still a 1/2 inch down here. So threw that through the big ass death bit, threw a little 60-degree chamfer on top of it at an angle, which I kind of did by hand. The rest of it I just said fuck it and sanded with a sander because I really did not feel like doing it and making all the jigs. So anyways, like I said, it comes in a cloth, so when you get it, you'll take this piece, which you need to, no matter what it is, you need to paint it black, or else it's going to show through, because you can see shit through this. You hold it up to the light here, you can see right through it. Probably kind of see some orange through it, but don't just do it on bare wood, because you will see right through it and it will look like shit. So anyways, paint it black, and then what you're going to want to do, I use the 249 Kevlar resin from US Composites. This is the easy way of doing it. The real way is to use the epoxy resin, but that costs more. Usually need heat, takes longer to cure. Will yellow a little bit faster than this shit, but I have it clear coated anyways, so it's all good. But anyways, you want to take this, you want to mix up a little bit of it, and put it on your piece, just a little coat of it, which it'll be that one, and let it get tacky. Now when it gets tacky, I'm not meaning like dry here, I'm meaning like you can put your finger to it and it's almost like a glue. And then you'll take your cloth and you'll drape it over it and work it down to where it sticks completely all around it. Now you can be a badass and you can probably wrap this shit around the back side of it to ensure that the edges are perfect, but I don't do that, because usually if you trim this edge off here, you can make it look pretty good. And even before you have it clear coated, throw a little line of black paint on there and it'll look perfect. But anyways, you put that over it, make sure it's dry, make sure it's stuck down, because this stuff will peel up. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Flat pieces are pretty easy, but you still want to make sure it's stuck down. Now let that cure for a little bit now, to where you know it's not going to come back up and it's actually bonded to it. And then you want to take your Kevlar resin, mix that up, and it's really, really important that you mix this shit with the right amount of hardener. Don't dump a bunch in there, because it will warp and it might not dry clear. You're working with something that dries crystal clear. So we're going to do this here. This is going to be a pain in the ass on the camera, but I mix up like the slightest amount for this. We're going to do 2 ounces. Some people may say that's not good to just do that little amount, but that's what I'm going to do. Now when you first mix it, it's going to look blue, but it dries clear. And the other thing you want to do on your last coat, let me count this out here, I don't have my little measuring thing. 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, I do 10 drops per ounce, which usually equals out to 1%. So mix that up real good. The other thing you're going to want to do on your last and final coat, you have to add surfacing wax. You have to, or you will not be able to sand it, especially if you're trying to wet sand, Because right now you can see this is cured, but you can see my fingerprint being put in it. It's sticky, and it will always be sticky unless you wax it. You have to wax it. So we'll mix this up here. Make sure it's mixed good, because with this shit like this, it's not like you can strip it back down or put a little bit of body filler over it. You mix it up good so it all cures. Which, doing little teeny amounts like this is really not the easiest thing to do, but I'm not one to waste shit. A gallon of that's about 45 bucks. So mix that up and get your chip brushed. Now just picture this being stuck down just bare cloth like that after you do your tacky coat, and just give it a nice thick coat. And this stuff's super thick, so it's not going to run all over the place. Now mine has already been trimmed down, so I've already given this 5 coats of the Silmar resin, and then once I did that, I let it sit overnight, which I usually try to plan it out to where it's going to sit overnight anyway, so I'm not wasting time. But you're going to have your piece is going to overhang on the edges, and you got to make sure the edges are stuck down real good, because that's going to ruin the whole thing. But once you do that and it's cured, and remember your last coat has wax on it, you'll take it up and you'll trim it off right up to the edge, and then you're going to want to sand it down with, I started with 400 and I worked my way up to 800 with a DA and by hand. The reason you want to do that is because you'll notice the first group of coats is not going to be flat. It's not going to look all, I mean, this is still not the flattest thing in the world, but it's going to be bumpy. It's going to show little imperfections and shit. So you're going to want to sand it down, but be careful, don't sand through it. That's awful. I've done it before, and you pretty much have to redo it. But you want to trim it off to where it, you don't have any excess, and it's right up to the edge like that. Sand it down to where it's smooth. You don't have to get it perfectly. You might have some divots or something. Just make sure it's clean, and about 800, and then you want to repeat the exact same process. Another 5 coats is what I do. Last one with the surfacing wax, and that's how you get it all clear like that. So once it gets wet with resin again, it's going to look real nice. Now what I'll do now, after this dries, I'll give it one more coat with some wax, and then I'll pop it off, trim all this excess off, sand it down really nice, probably start at 400, work my way up to 12, and then I'll take it over to the painter, and I'll have the painter clear coat it, and then I'll wet sand it, and it'll be perfect. Another important thing to remember, before your final coat, or before every coat of this resin dries, hit it lightly with a heat gun, and you'll start to see some of the little bitty bubbles pop. It's real important that you do that, because when you sand this down, you will see the little bitty bubbles and pinholes. Now if you're having it cleared, it's not going to be a big deal, because that'll fill that in, but I like to do it anyways just to ensure there's no imperfections. But it's a very long process, and you'll go through a ton of chip brushes, and I've actually used probably two-thirds of that gallon on the pieces I did for the Hyundai. So you do go through a lot of resin regardless of whether you're mixing up little small amounts. You go through a ton of it. Now a lot of people use a vacuum, and that will ensure that cloth lays perfectly and it's sucked to the piece. That would be the best way to do it, but we don't have a vacuum, and I'm sure as hell not buying one. Also, I like to sit here and make sure and watch it. Sometimes you'll see like little imperfections. You might get a speck of dust or something in your piece. Just take a razor blade and try to hit it real fast before it really dries, and then go back over it and make sure and get all the shit out of it. But you could polish this and buff it and wax it and be just as shiny as having it clear coated. I just like to have it clear coated, make sure it's protected. But like I said, long process, a lot of materials, very frustrating. It's a very, very shitty day out here. I'm back in my cave. It's cold. and rainy. But I figured I'd do a little video. If you got any questions, feel free to ask me. Or hopefully that some badass dude that does this shit all the time could chime in and give us a little pointers. But like I said, this is the way I do it, and it seems to have worked pretty good.